Well, guess what, y'all? We have got a program today. We're so excited. This is my new friend. We just met, 30 seconds ago. But we already have something in common, and I can't wait for her to share. This is Mona Rosene. She has written a book, and it is doing, I looked at it on Amazon, and it's tracking well. So, yeah, you got great 5-star reviews.
Yeah.
That's super. So anyway, I just am so tickled to have you, Mona, with me. And I want you to tell everybody about how this book came into being. I hope I'm saying this right. Hellbent and Heavenward.
Heavenward, yep.
Heavenward. Okay, yep. Tell us about that. How'd you come about the book? How'd you come about with that?
Usually books or, a lot of significant things that you do in your life come through pain. And I would say that this is how this book was birthed, in a sense. Maybe not pain, so much pain, but a lot of frustration. So as we talked earlier, I'm a dietitian. I have a very scientific mind, so I'm very analytical. And I was on a drive. I grew up in North Dakota. I was on a drive home from North Dakota back to Colorado, where I live now, and was listening to a book about body image, area where I've struggled with for decades. And I thought to myself, as I was coming to the end of this audio sample, that, it's probably guaranteed I know 90% of what's in that book because I'm a dietitian. I said, the problem with books like these is they don't ever tell you how to apply the information that they're teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And that morphed into another conversation with myself about, same thing with good sermons. If you listen to a really good message at church or whatever online, many times they don't tell you how to apply it to your current state of affairs, whatever that happens to be in work, in life, whatever it is. So I got the idea of writing a book on how do you apply this so that you could take a lot of the good information that you're learning and actually apply it to the life that you have going on today. And I called a friend of mine because I was like, I don't know, I don't want to write a book. But ultimately, I wanted to do some speaking because I enjoy public speaking. I'm probably one of the few people who actually does like to do public speaking. And I called him and he's like, yeah, you should write it. And then I was in a mastermind group at the same time and pitched it to my mastermind group. And I was like, the world doesn't need another book. And they're like, yes, it does. And you need to write it. And then by a few divine God winks, I was at a women's retreat and there was a publisher there and he was giving away 2 hours with him for free. And I won that 2 hours. And I pitched him the idea and he said, it's a great idea. Let's write it. So I worked with him and, he helped me do the outline and all of that kind of stuff. And about a year later, here we are.
I'm curious, who's the publisher?
It was Throne Publishing. Jeremy and Jeremy Brown was from Throne Publishing. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Because I tell you, I call it writing books is like a crack cocaine habit that you just throw money in a pit. And if it gets traction, you're just so thankful. And it's wonderful to be able to put your heart and your head. It sounds like you have a combination of both. So what's your if I had to say, Mona, what's your very favorite part of the entire book? I mean, a chapter or some, in mine, I've got just a couple of sentences. And when I read it, I go, oh, I just love it. How about with you?
There's a few things. I think the first part is the way I broke down the prison in which we live, because I believe that a lot of people, regardless of what their faith happens to be, live in a prison that was created by lies they either told themselves or lies that they've heard from others.
Mm-hmm.
And this prison that I identify in the book is based on 4 lies that I believe that we tell ourselves about who God is.
Yeah.
And what we have to do to earn his love. So it's perfection, punishment, performance, and permanence. And permanence, kind of like being that last wall or the door that slams shut, is like life is always going to be this way. It's never going to change.
Yeah.
And I think women in particular struggle with, the lie of perfection. And I'm not saying that men don't struggle as well, but women, I think when it comes to how they believe that, their house has to look, their body has to look, how they do and raise their kids, all of that, how do they function at work? All of that has to be, quote, perfect. But there's no line and there's no definition for perfect, and if it's not perfect based on some kind of weird abstract definition we have in our heads, then we're going to be punished.
Yeah.
But then we also try to perform in order to make everything perfect. So it's just this endless cycle that goes on and on and on. So that is a part that I think that will resonate with many people, to identify and become aware of what lies are you telling yourself and what like false beliefs are you believing, not only about God, but about yourself, and not knowing your identity.
Yeah, you are so right. You get to a certain age in life and everything kind of starts to congeal, and you start to look at your peers and yourself and you go, wait a minute, there's a big disconnect. So funny you said that. One of my books is called Rhinestones on My Flip-Flops. And I take all the biblical women in the New Testament women, and all Jewish women, and I write about, their flip-flops and what we can learn from them to sparkle and shine. And I talk about domestic diva Martha, who had to have everything perfect. And I tell funny stories about. And so there is such a place for that. Give yourself permission not to be perfect. Give yourself permission just to tap into who you really are as a Christian woman, and to be able to give those individual things back in your own way. Which, when I look at what you're saying as a speaker, I can see where that would be an incredibly powerful workshop with an interactive workshop with women, with those, perfection, performance, how, and that, just off the cuff, because I love books too. That might be a second book for you, and a companion book is a workbook. That really, like, you've got time, because I was going to go into your other profession as a nutritionalist. Is that how you say it?
Nutritionist, yeah.
Nutritionist.
Dietitian, yeah.
Dietitian, yeah. I was looking for I combined the two.
Yeah.
So tell me how your interest, because I think what you're doing now in your profession, of course, led to the desire to write the book, because it's got, if we don't feel good, we're not going to perform at all. We'll perform all right, but it'll be a big fat zero. So tell me about that job that you, like your other job, so to speak.
Well, I work in industry. So I work in the supplement industry. I've also spent over a decade in the food industry. So about 2 decades combined in industry specifically. So there's a lot of science, and my job is to translate the science into consumer messaging. And, it's interesting, because I had a conversation with Jesus one day while I was hiking, and struggling and having a conversation more about trusting him with another area of my life. And the conversation that eventually evolved with him came back to me trusting him with my diet. And I talk a little bit about in the book about my struggle with eating disorders, and trying to kind of let go of the control about the eating disorders and body image and all that kind of stuff. And he said, Jesus, what I believe he said to me was that, he said, I gave you your career so that you could understand the body and the way you metabolize food. So you don't have to be so strict with what you are eating and what your exercise and all of that kind of stuff. So not that I've let go of some of that control. I've let go of some of it, but I don't necessarily let go of all of it. I think it's just, I also was a competitive athlete in bike racing. So it was something that I would justify that I needed to know because I was competing. And when I learned about the body, and then I started working at where I'm currently working at full time, where it's very biochemistry, cellular energy based. So the pathways within the cell, I was just like, God is just so amazing because of the way he created our bodies. He always has a backup, in a sense, created in the body. And, if one pathway doesn't work quite right, there's always another way to get what needs to be done, until ultimately, if some kind of disease or disorder takes over, if there's kind of genetic failures, then obviously that's going to create some challenges. But in somebody who's healthy, the body is it's a magnificent creation. And I think that just kind of steeped a lot of my curiosity of God, of how he could create us in such a fabulous way. I mean, it says so in Psalms, but I think until you really kind of look at, if you really are encouraged about looking at the anatomy and the physiology and how your body actually works and the function of it, you really don't know how he created us. It's like nobody else could have done this. No human could have done this.
Yeah, I mean, all that cellular dysfunction is just huge. And just my husband and I, we love to watch Thomas. We love to watch any kind of documentary on health. And a friend of mine is just kind of reminds me of you in that she, she bikes, she hikes. Right now, she's hiking through Spain. But she told me, she said, you got to see the Netflix movie, Fantastic Fungi. Or I can't remember if that's are you from, I'm sure you are, about just, mushrooms. And like right now I was telling you, we make these smoothies and they're like incredibly hearty, but it's got like turkey tail and lion's mane. And so things like that, and then I love looking into, I'll tell you what really fascinates me is gut health, because that pretty much takes care of everything. I mean, headaches. I mean, my daughter, she's gluten intolerant. She has horrible headaches. And I'm telling her, I said, honey, it's the gut. You got to look at, and we have destroyed so much good bacteria in our bodies. And when they, as you probably know, because you study this, people go into third world countries and looking at their diet and their bacteria in their system. They have those wonderful enzymes, I guess you call it that we don't have anymore for our gut health. Am I saying this right now, Mona? You correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I have a chapter about gut health in the book. It's called How to Trust Your Gut. And
yeah, that's what I was getting to. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And obviously I go into intuition in that chapter, but I also talk about how stress can actually wreak havoc on your health because of a lot of what's going on in the gut. And there's also another chapter in there about reconciling God and science, where I talk up, and then how to renew your mind. Those 3 chapters are pretty scientific, and they go into a little bit about the gut-brain connection, all of the function in the sense of the gut. And one of the things that happens with gut health is, oh my gosh, stress is probably one of the biggest players in gut health. And not that I didn't know it, but it's interesting because I'm going through this journey, not only of menopause, but of issues changing in my gut health. I've always had issues with gut health ever since I've been a kid. And I was talking with my counselor about it a little bit last week, actually. And she was talking about resisting. And if you resist certain things, like as much as I would love to resist menopause, it ain't going to make it stop. It's coming no matter what. But what happens is, because if you have this resistance, it changes so many things in the body, and it doesn't allow your body to flow through as well as it could. And it doesn't allow you to actually find your solution that's going to work best for you as you go through that journey or any kind of health journey. And then, if you talk a little bit more about diet, the standard American diet is just that. It's sad. That's the acronym for it. And if people realize, one of the things I talk about in that chapter is making very, very small changes in your diet can make significant improvements in your health. Something as simple as, having a healthy, well-balanced breakfast that's not processed, refined white flour, white sugar, to having something that has more protein, because women especially need more protein, especially going into menopause. And then having, some good fat in there and some healthier carb choices, not a processed, refined, whatever, white flour, white sugar that you happen to so easily grabbed at, Starbucks or any coffee shop where they grab a muffin or something like that. That's just horrendous for you.
Yeah. Thomas and I, my husband and I, we started taking now he takes more than me, but I take a teaspoon of olive oil before I go to bed every night. And the medicinal healing purposes and the sleep factor is wonderful. So, and I agree with you. I think we are so, as the word tells us, we're wonderfully and beautifully made. And we have got to, either we're going to be a slave to big pharma, or we're going to try to avoid all of that as we take care of ourselves and as we age and our immune systems decrease. And you're right. I think stress will kill you. It just compromises your entire immune system. I mean, that's a fact. And that's something that I struggle with too. I mean, life is stressful. I mean, the longer you live, like my mama said, the longer you live, the more stuff you're going to see. And you got to have skills to handle these things. And I was at a speaking engagement in Arkansas about 2 years ago, and there's a 92-year-old woman there, and she was just fabulous. And I said, okay, what's your secret? She said, well, my favorite scripture. And I said, well, what would that be? I was expecting some incredibly profound, something from somewhere. And she said, oh no, honey, it's in the Bible 737 times. And this is it. And it came to pass. She said, it comes and it passes. And you've got to tell yourself that so much of life is not permanent. And you cannot, and I think social media is probably the worst place. We constantly are looking at everybody else going, oh, wow, they're gorgeous. And I mean, I know on my phone, if I take a bad picture of myself in 2 little clicks, I can look super good, So you can Photoshop yourself. But we cannot be caught up in the comparing, and we cannot get caught up in those kinds of superficial things. And it is very difficult at times. And because we do live in a very visual world. And so I love what you're doing. And I love tying in the spiritual component, because it is I think with all these things that we experience as we age, we have to have not only good information from good people to teach us and learn from, but we also have to be packed with the Word of God to help fight the demons that try to tell us, oh, that's a lie, that won't work. That's, I don't believe in anything faddish. I think as we age, we just need to be smart, and we need to contact the right people. And I love what you're doing. I think that's a wonderful way to help women go to the next level of their best selves, is what I'll call it.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I incorporated in the book was the tools of the 12-step program. Because I grew up in a family, Dad was an alcoholic. And so there's a lot of codependency going on with, my mom. Unbeknownst to me and my brother, my mom was codependent. And she eventually found Al-Anon, and I found it back in 2017. I started a 12-step program in late 2015 because of a breakup that I had, realizing that, okay, maybe now I'm finally the common denominator in my life, shocker. But one of the great tools of the 12-step program is, being aware. And each step is a tool in a sense of how you can get through some of the any kind of issue. It doesn't have to be like an addiction per se. It could be relational issues, and not only a personal relationship, but I used the 12-step when I was going through relationship issues with at a former workplace, with not only other people that you work with, but with bosses, with everything. You can leverage 12-step program and, try not to control. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I think everybody wants to control, but I think women in general have this tendency to want to control more because of all the other garbage that we put into our lives about we believe we have to be perfect or, perform and people please and all of that kind of stuff. So if that quote that you had mentioned from that 92-year-old woman, that Bible verse that she had talked about, there's a woman in my Toastmasters group who talks about this too shall pass. And it's so true. And I think, we keep thinking that we're stuck for some reason, and we're not necessarily. There's always something that we can do. And that's what I'm working through with regards to, being post-menopause. How is my body changing, which is difficult for me to kind of accept. But my counselor and I were working through the acceptance, because once you accept it, then your mind clears and you can make choices that will get you ultimately to the path that you want to be on.
I love that. And, I love the fact that when you said the 12-step program does not necessarily have to involve any kind of alcohol or drugs or whatever. It's just a really good way to live. And I know a lot of people get to that number 6 step and they can't proceed because isn't that forgiveness?
No, number 6 is well, so there's no, number 9 is forgiveness, because that's the amends step. So number 6 is the shortcomings. 6 and 7 are asking God to remove the shortcomings, identifying and being ready to admit that you have shortcomings, and then asking God to remove the shortcomings. But steps 8 and 9 are about amends. So you make a list of all people that you have harmed, and then 9, you give amends you give direct amends when appropriate, because sometimes amends aren't always appropriate. For
Right.
instance, if you were beaten, or if there's some kind of an abuse situation, it is not recommended to go back to the person and make an amends with the person who beat you, or if there's any kind of abuse going on. But there are multiple ways to make amends, and there's multiple ways, for forgiveness. You can make amends through a letter. You don't have to mail it. If the person happens to have already passed away, you can make amends to God or to somebody else who might be standing in their place. There's so many different ways to make it. There's something that I had to do with my dad, and even now I have to do with my mom, is more of a living amends. How can I be a better daughter? Where can I set boundaries? Because boundaries they're needed, and appropriate boundaries are needed.
Oh, definitely.
And then how can I, just love better? And that's not only with my mom, but also with personal relationships, my boyfriend, everybody. How do I love better?
Yeah. I don't know if it was Dr. Henry Cloud wrote the book, Boundaries and Borders.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great book. I love the book called Foolproof Your Life by Jan Sibelius. I love that book. That's the kind of stuff that when, the old saying is, you have to forgive. You had no idea that you were releasing a prisoner. You just didn't realize it was you that was in prison. And I've been down that journey too. And that's one of the hardest things. And I know that several friends of mine, I have a guy that I was on the platform with, I was speaking in Georgia, and he's wonderful. His name is James Beck. And he's done a whole journey for 2 years. It's called Giving Beck. And he got rid of everything. He was from California, and you'll love the story, Mona. And so he went and just liquidated everything. And he, through a network of friends and social media for 2 years, he spent 3 days giving back, and then letting those folks pay it forward. So he had a real bad breakup with a girlfriend. He told us from the platform, so I can tell it. And he said that old girlfriend called him, and he said, "Oh, I'm so worried about what she's going to do to me." Because he had said to her, "You have a substance problem. You are abusing or something." And so she called him and said, "I understand you're traveling across the country. I need you to help me with some cabinets." And he went to her house, and he said, frankly, he was afraid. And then when he got there and they sat down, and she said, "I'm in the 12-step program. You were right. I have an addiction. And I just need I need to ask your forgiveness." And that was the whole purpose of going to her house. But isn't that so cool?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how it works, and how it does actually set you free. When you can forgive, it sets you free. And I think, one of the greatest things too is that God forgave us.
Right.
And that is, something that he asks us to do. But I also believe that he understands the difficulty of forgiveness. If you've seen the movie The Shack, I don't know if you've seen that movie.
Oh, yeah. I love The Shack.
When they were in that scene where he was trying to forgive, the killer of his daughter, he had to say it, thousands and thousands of times before it could actually come true. And I'm sure it took months. And I think God actually appreciates and loves our willingness.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the things. Like, I remember when I had to do an amends with my ex-husband, I was like, when I first started 12-step, I'm like, there's no way I'm doing amends with him. No way. I'm telling people in my small group, and I'm like, there's just no way. And then you get to that step, that's one of the other great things that a sponsor would do in a 12-step program, is that you don't rush ahead. You work the steps in order, one at a time, because you do not rush ahead. And by the time I got to that step, I'm like, all right, I could probably do an email amends to him. And I did. And it's more kind of freeing for me. It's like, okay, sure, it was kind of a check the box thing, but it was also kind of a release, in a sense, of releasing a weight of heaviness of somebody I needed to forgive for the stuff that I did, for my part only, not for his part, just for my part.
Yeah.
And that's, you own 100% of your part. If it's only 10%, you own 100% of 10%, but don't take on anybody else's part.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's difficult for women to do that also, because we want to, again, that control thing, we want to take it all on. And perhaps if we're trying to take on somebody else's responsibility, maybe we'd get some self-pity from other people, empathy and that kind of stuff, which we look for as well. It's sometimes the garbage that goes on in my head, man, I'm like, where on earth did you make that up from?
I know. It's like the whispers of the enemy, and people don't believe in
Right.
that, but brother, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I would get up in the mornings when I was going through a difficult time, and I would just quote scripture. I think that's what Jesus did. He quoted scripture at it. And
Hmm.
there's no better, more powerful weapon to me if you dive into the Word of God and just find those scriptures that, I have a friend that goes to bed with the armor, putting on the armor, and so
Hmm.
I love that. But, you're so right about that. And I just believe that if you look back on your life, I guarantee you can track this. And when you forgive and the willingness, and that's what the Lord's looking for, the willingness and it might not work. So what? For that other person, it's all for you. It's going to work for you. That's for sure. But in the natural, it might not work. In the spiritual, brother, you've got a cannon on your side. You've got the greatest weapon. And I'm not talking about to destroy or anything. It just helps loosen your mind. This child of mine keeps calling. Excuse me. I'm not going to answer it.
Yeah.
But it's just about the greatest thing you can do. But when I had asked my sister to forgive me, and all my, even my Christian friends, what? That's nuts. And I said, no, I feel it in my heart. I need to do that. So I was at an event, and there was a lot of people there. And I said, Lord, this is your show. I'm willing. And it was like the Red Sea parted, and there she was. And I said, if I did anything to hurt you, I'm sorry. And she looked at me so funny. She said, okay, like that. That was it. Well, let me just tell you, it wasn't a year later, almost to the very day she died.
Oh, wow.
And it was 5 months after my mother died. So it was a double whammy. But you know what? I did my part.
Yeah.
I absolutely did my part. And I looked at that, and the Lord told me, I'm going to set you free. I'm going to amaze you. And you are going, life is going to change. And I hope I would hold on to that. So when you look back, when you do that, it's just like the most incredible gift you can give yourself. And then God can move you. It's like he's moving a boulder. And all of a sudden you can go where you've been struggling to go, because I think that's when the blessings can start. But the biggest blessing is you released yourself.
Yeah. And I think that takes a little bit of work. I know for me, it took some work in 12-step, because I would also, manipulate in my head, which is common for codependency. If I quote, forgive this person, then, and for me, it was usually relationships with men, then he'll like me, or he'll know I'm not a bad person.
Right.
So it was me trying to, in a sense, mentally manipulate somebody into not thinking I'm a bad person. And I didn't even know for sure. I had no facts that he thought I was a bad person, anybody.
Right.
And so you really have to be ready to forgive when you let go of that other manipulation aspect for it. Like, you're doing it solely for yourself. It doesn't matter if that person were ever to like you, to ever speak to you again, whatever. You don't have forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. And I think that's what a lot of people think, that they'd have to reconcile with somebody. It's like, absolutely not.
Well, I mean, and also people think, well, you're just going to let them get away with it, and they should not get away. Well, that's not our job. That is a spiritual force that we cannot control. The forgiveness component. I mean, when we release, we let it go. And then I believe that things can loosen up for that person to hopefully go to the next best level in their lives. But there are no guarantees, and who cares? In other words, you need to do it for you, and hopefully they'll catch on to what, I mean, to me, we are a beacon for other people when we forgive. I've had several of my friends that I was really kind of shocked over, that would call me and say, how'd you do that? And I said, well, first of all, it's not me. I have to, it's the Holy Spirit. And so I can't take credit for that. And they've told me on the outside looking in, and they know me, they'd say, gosh, Jane, you did something I just don't know if I can do. And I thought, y'all, come on, you better get with it. Come on, you better do this. I mean, because it'll keep you in a prison. It will. So when the name of the book, when Hellbent, how'd you come up with Hellbent?
The publisher had asked me to brainstorm some titles, and I was thinking about a word that was likened to perseverance,
Yeah.
And for me, like the whole journey that I had with my faith, which was understanding the true nature and character of who God is versus the lies I was told or the lies I told myself. And, God is love, period. And I think for me, when I was really struggling with so many different, like, oh, but he's this, that, and the other. And I'm like, that just doesn't make sense in my mind. So I went on a journey of researching and, finding different perspectives and looking at, more the early church fathers, the early church, right after like Athanasius, who was back in the 300s, and looking at what did he teach, and those types of things, and who is still kind of teaching what Athanasius taught. I just realized that. So for me, I was hell bent on finding out who God really was, and the true nature of him. And he not only loved me, because I figured, okay, yeah, unconditional love. Yeah, that's fine. My parents, there's unconditional love there, but does he like me? And I think that was a more difficult concept for me to grasp, because he can love me. I'm his kid. He has to, but he doesn't like me. He doesn't want to be around me. And then when I finally realized, like, yeah, he does like me. He is, his face lights up every time I talk to him. Every time I even thank him for, living in Colorado with the beautiful mountains, anything like that. He's just so pleased to be with us. And the other thing that I've learned too is the encounters. Mm-hmm. So for people who might not be very well versed in the Bible, I think an encounter with God is so much stronger than actually having biblical knowledge, because that knowledge, for me anyway, it would mess up with the encounters that I was having with him. It's like, well, that can't be real because of X, Y, Z. But God speaks to you in your language. He will speak to you like he'll speak to you with a Southern accent. He doesn't speak to me. He speaks to me with a North Dakota, Yankee accent. So, and he knows the ways to best talk to me.
Right.
And when you can have that encounter, I think that encounter, when you have specific encounters like that one I had with Jesus while I was hiking about my diet and all that kind of stuff, it infinitely outweighs what knowledge you may have like read in a Bible. I'm not saying anything that's not discrediting the Bible or what you're reading in the Bible, but I think having encounters, it's just like having an encounter with a friend of yours or your husband or your spouse or boyfriend, anything like that. Those encounters are usually a lot stronger than maybe a text message or a message that you could have gotten from that same person, because you're with that person. And for me, it's just, it solidifies a relationship, an intimate relationship,
right?
Far more than reading about the person.
Oh, definitely. You can't take the place of that. And I think that I think that women need the courage to step out of that box. Now, some women just can't, and I respect that. I got that. But if you can, and then you grow and you find out, so many times in life, Mona, I think that God puts us in situations so we will see what we're lacking in. Mm-hmm. Something grips us like, oh, that's a problem. I got to dive into this and ask for guidance here, or seek out someone. I don't know about you, but all my friends are much older than me, because I love their wisdom. I love their journey. And I think that's the gift of folks that we see, that we admire, that handle so many of life's curveballs. How'd you do that? Well, this is how I think. This is why I was so interested in that 92-year-old woman. I love others' perspective. So I gotta hit on the Colorado thing. Now, where do you actually live in Colorado?
Just north of Denver a little bit.
Well, speaking of speaking, our National Speakers Association is going to be at the Gaylord in Denver, and it's week after next. You should come on by. It's kind of like the mothership for speakers. So it's a great conference, and it's nsaspeaker.org, and it's really great, and you're close. You could attend for a day. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I think my friends always say, if you got a book, you got a speech, you got a speech, you got a book. And that's very true. And, the title of your book would be a great title of a speech. And I think your target audience, of course, is women, because we all need to hear the balance of the spiritual and the physical. And to me, that's moving forward in my life as I get older. And I went to this doctor and I was sitting there going, I do not belong here. This is a little too bougie for me. Never thought I'd say that. And I just fell in love with her because she's like you in that she is all ensconced in nutrition. And then we talked about menopause. And I thought to myself, I hope she's not going to put me on some kind of funky cream because I'm not interested in all that rub here, rub there, rub here. And she looked at me and she said, oh, I wouldn't touch you. You're good. You sail right through it. And I said, yes, I did. And so, and so we had more talk about supplements. And she did a 14-page workup on me. And some of the stuff, I had to look it up. But the thing I'm into now is our water. Because she said that you've got a trace of arsenic. I said, hush your mouth. What? She said, yeah. So I'm filtering everything. We're on city water.
Yeah.
That's no treat. And so I'm on toothpaste that has no fluoride or in it, that kind of thing. So I'm definitely doing a deep dive into nutrition. And we take the supplement that you represent, which I love because it's all cellular. I mean, I'm correct, right? I love it. We've got it right in here. It's so funny you said that. I went, oh, we take that. So, I just think our brains and our gut and our exercise, everything is like a ball. I mean, everything has to be in perfect balance or we won't roll right. I can't say it like that. But I don't know about you, but I'll go to places and I'll hear people like in restaurants and stuff, and I'll think, what are they thinking? I mean, that's just poison. Like the South, we think gravy's a beverage. And we think, what did a friend of mine say? When I was a little boy, we didn't have no cholesterol. Mama would have probably fried it.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, there's all kind of funny stuff like that. We've got the absolute worst diet in the South, So there is and what's frustrating to me, I don't know if you find this to be true, but there are times, of course, we go to our GPs and we'll sit there, my husband and I both, and we'll talk to our friends. They're our doctors, Thomas went to school with his GP. They're clueless about this stuff, honey. They don't know nothing.
Yeah.
Oh no, don't tell me this. And they're just like, yeah. And there's this cute little girl representing a big farm and a short skirt and high heels. I shouldn't have said that. But I mean, they get ushered right in and they get their little products.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think there's a revolution going on. People waking up to this sad diet.
Well, I find that too, because a lot of my healthcare providers that I seek out are also, they're not in the insurance system. Most of them are self-pay, but they're also doing a lot of different, they're functional medicine is what we call it, and they're incorporating the entire mind, body, spirit, because as I mentioned earlier, God did not create our bodies to work in a silo. Everything has like a dependent on something else happening. And that's one of the things I've even talked about at work. It's like, we cannot look at the function of what the nutrient where I work, what it does in a silo. We cannot do that because everything is influenced by so many different factors. So it's very difficult, and that's where the research is still moving toward, and it's evolving because we have to understand, well, what else impacts it, and how does this play into it, and what's about this other pathway. And that's a lot of more functional medicine doctors are looking at that too, not so deep into a cellular level, but what's going on in menopause. Well, how's the thyroid impacted? How's the brain impacted? How's the gut impacted? All of that. I listen to a lot of different folks on YouTube about better, specialize in menopause or specialize in training, like fitness training and stuff for women in post-menopause and all that kind of stuff. So it's fascinating to me. It's also a little bit overwhelming. I got to kind of get out of the weeds every now and then. Come up for air.
Well, like with, I've always wanted a particle size study done because I know if you get big particle size with cholesterol, chances are it won't be able to do much damage. It's the little babies. That's the problem. So this doctor I love her, by the way. She's like fabulous. And so she spent an hour with me and she said, well, let's do a particle size thing. So of course I got the little babies, which isn't good. But then she said, let's take some berberine. So she started me on 12 milligrams. Is that how you say it, berberine? And so just things like that I'm learning myself that I wish I had in my arsenal long ago. But I guess, now I can see, like, as we fight COVID, which is really a bad cold now. I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's not near what it used to be. I got that. And sometimes it mutates. I get that too. So, but we have to beef up our immune system. That's the thing. And that's one thing I'm very thankful that when I did that deep dive into me specifically, that I did see that I've got a really good system of my antioxidants and whatnot. And that's very good. But it costs. I mean, I had this little in-home kit, and good grief, it was not cheap. But when I saw that my insurance did cover part of it, I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't know I was spending all that. But let me tell you, I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of, there's just so many different things that need to be involved when you're looking at your healthcare in different areas. But
want to tell everybody how to get in touch with you if they want you to speak or they want to get your book or
go to hellbentandheavenward.com. You can contact me through that. I have a little contact me link that you can use to email me. You can also email me at hellbentandheavenward@gmail.com. You can buy the book also at hellbentandheavenward.com. There's a link right there on the homepage to go buy the book. It's also on Amazon. You can just buy it there as well. So and then I'm on Facebook, more so on Facebook, but I am also on Instagram, but I don't do a whole lot of Instagram. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. I have been thinking about starting a blog on a few different topics of how do you stay free? Because my subtitle is Break Free from Lies and Live Love. And it's like, okay, well, how do you stay free? Because I think that's a lot of issues that people go through. It's like they have all these great tools that I use from 12-step. You can take 2 steps forward, but if you take 1 step back, it doesn't matter. You're still ultimately progressing forward. And when you do take that step back, you have better tools now to get yourself out of it a lot faster than what happened in the past. Like for me, I could stay stuck in some areas of my life for, oh my gosh, I bet you years.
Yeah.
And then I finally found some tools that were beneficial and that were helpful.
I could see you doing a newsletter, and it would have a component of, the supplement of the month or the supplement, let's talk about blah, blah. Yeah. Women would love that. And then there'd be like the second part would be your spiritual self, your physical self, your mental wealth, your physical wealth. I could see that. That would be popular.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I definitely would do that. I mean, I spent a lot of time on my newsletter. I was just, it's just it's a commitment of love. But let me tell you, it breaks through a lot of these platforms do. And then like I use eye contact, but it will post things and it links to blogs. And it's a real art form to writing. I'll put you on my newsletter list so you can see how I do it. But I thought, and you got to give people value. People don't want, I like to write a lot about humor, but I decided like this week, I'm sending mine out and it's got recipes because we live on a peach farm in South Carolina. And then I was raised on a tomato farm. So I've got a tomato pie recipe. I know it's ooey gooey. And then I'm breaking ranks. And then I've got, twice a year is not bad to have a tomato pie and a peach pie. It's okay. Or once a year. But
I've never heard of tomato pie. My boyfriend loves tomatoes, so I'm going to have to get that recipe from you.
I'll send you the newsletter. But okay. That's all it says. I said, so I'm thinking I'll just break ranks. I always do something, try to do something funny. Yeah. Or give people value. And I've learned that that's the most important thing is to link to some value. Mm-hmm. And so that's really how you do more engaging information, that you look at your clicks, mm-hmm. and see where people are going and track to see how many people are interested.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Well, what is any parting remarks about just what you'd like folks to know about your craft, your book, your career? In a year from now, share that with us.
I just think that, I really just want women specifically to understand a couple of things, how much they're liked by God. They're like, you are such a friend of Jesus that I just want people to know that and to really just like live in that freedom and relaxation. Because when you trust that, you can't do anything can't do anything wrong that you're going to kick him out of, or you're going to get kicked out of his good graces. Nothing. So just live the life and use the talents that he gave you, and just be open to whatever it is that he has for you. Like, open your eyes to not only the things around you, but what he is specifically placing in front of you that could be a way that he wants you to like move into a purpose or a different purpose or wherever it is. And then also open your ears, because how many times do you hear something and you're like, you just blow it off, and then maybe you hear it again and it's completely different. So it's just a different opportunity. So I would just encourage people, women specifically, to just know how much they're light and a friend of Jesus. And, my book will give you tools to work through all the potential issues that you might be having with getting out of your own prison that you created. Don't beat yourself up, and allow yourself some grace, because we can do that too. We beat ourselves up because we did something to ourselves, but that's where the forgiveness comes in. So you got to forgive yourself first.
That is so true. A lot of people do not take that into consideration, that you do have to forgive yourself, number one. And I think when you understand the perfect love for yourself and forgiveness, then you can, the Bible is very clear about that. You only can love other people when you love yourself. And that's paradise.
Yeah.
And there's no way you could understand that kind of love. And people that are unlovely live in a sense of not loving themselves. And, the people that love themselves are about the greatest people that you can have relationships with, because they're healthy, they're transparent, just like a speaker. My favorite speakers are those that get up on stage and it's the same talking one-on-one as they are on the platform, because people need to see real and vulnerability. I think people need to know that, we all fall short, and no one's perfect.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And that's super important for people to understand, that you don't have to check every box to be accepted. And there's some people, like I always say, I don't think they like me, but it doesn't matter, because I don't want them to.
It's funny because everybody wants to be liked by as many people as possible, but geez, you couldn't even keep up with that. And it's just unrealistic. And I want to be liked by the most important people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Not everybody. I want to be liked by the most important people. And I also want to be, compassionate to all people, and just be able to love people better.
Yeah. But I'm kind of like you. I'm thinking, oh, that person doesn't like you. Good. I don't want them to like me.
Yeah.
I'm not in their genre. That's good. That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this time. We're at like 50 minutes, and I'll share with you where this is going to be shared. But I hope to see you in less than a month.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm going to look into that. So I might be emailing you to get a little bit more information about that. I would absolutely love to attend that. So I think I'm going to do my best to make that a priority. See if I can get a few vacation days.
Sure. That'd be awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mona. I've enjoyed it. I'm so glad Mike got us acquainted. I'm sorry it took so long.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
I tell you, my biggest problem was I didn't have good internet. Isn't that horrible? So far in the country. It's like, what? I feel like Wilma Flintstone, like the door cages. Yeah. Anyway, for your story. Thank you so much.
All right.